Great.
All right, we are rolling. Mark, kick us off.
Yeah. Miracle of technology. Well, first of all, I want to just thank everybody for joining us this evening. Unprecedented times, to say the least, but it's great to have all of you joining us tonight, and hopefully we can do a great job tonight. As I just mentioned before, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat section as we're going along, and we'll get to as many as we can by the end of it. The session is going to be recorded, and so we will send out the link to everyone afterwards. Just a little blurb about conscious capitalism. Conscious capitalism was really the belief around making money is important. It's the lifeblood of your organization, but there's more to just making money in business. And it is around these 4 pillars. It's having a higher purpose for your organization. It's your stakeholders, not your stockholders. It's conscious leadership, and it's culture. And that's what drives. We want to thank our corporate sponsors for helping us provide these types of meetings to you and this type of information out to the organization. If you're interested in becoming a corporate sponsor, or if you have questions about becoming an individual member, please reach out to David Utz or myself. And our email addresses will be in the document, in the recordings that get sent out. As Rosie had mentioned, there is a document that she has posted in Google Docs for you all to help take notes. There are 4 sections in there. The first one is the what, and these are just able for you to take the notes from tonight's meeting. The so what is filtering what from what you're learning from this discussion, and how is it going to work in your organization. And then it's the now what, which is really 1 to 2 action steps that you want to take to influence or lead your organization through becoming a conscious organization or a more human workplace. And finally, community that I build. This was originally intended to be for an in-person event, obviously, but we wanted to share it with you to be able to capture some of this information. I just want to tell you a little bit about Rosie Ward. Rosie is a fierce advocate for humanity who is sought after to help humanize workplaces that free, fuel, and inspire people to bring their best selves to work and home each day. She serves as the CEO and founder of Salveo Partners, a professional consulting and training company focused on equipping organizations to find success while putting people back at the forefront of their business. She consults with organizations of all sizes and industries and coaches. She also develops people so they can break past barriers, step into greatness, and show us as a leader in all of their areas. And on that note, I am going to turn it over to Rosie, and thanks, Rosie, for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me and see the slides all right?
We can.
Fantastic. Well, I am super, super excited that we were still able to do this and that you are all here. John and I, my co-conspirator is with us as well. He normally would not have been able to because we are in different places. I'm in Minneapolis and he's in Florida. And I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your evening to be here. And this is our 2nd book that we published. It officially launched today. It's been in pre-order for 2 months. And we partner with Conscious Capitalism Press on this book and can't think of any better partner. We've been a huge advocate for the Conscious Capitalism pillars and what it does. And so what my goal today is just to give you a little bit of a high level of what's in the book and how you can use it, and then really leverage the wisdom of our fabulous panel. So Raj Sisodia, for those of you who are familiar already and part of the Conscious Capitalism community, he's obviously the founder of it, a co-founder of it, and we are so grateful that he wrote the foreword of this book, and he always writes so eloquently. And we're also incredibly grateful for the people who are champions of this and really feel compelled by this work and wrote endorsements and reviews. So Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Wehmiller, wrote a lovely review. Amy Edmondson, who's the guru of psychological safety, wrote one. Kristen Hadid, the founder of Student Made and author of Permission to Screw Up, and many, many others that we wouldn't have time to list. And so we're just really, really thankful of the interest in this work. And for everyone on here, I think the take home here is that we really wanted to make sure that regardless of your role, that anyone can use the principles in this book and the tips in this book to really influence positive change, not just at your workplace, but in your communities. Many of us now, we have new communities where we have home and we have our broader communities. And so it's so much bigger than just the workplace, and that we all have the opportunity to influence positive change regardless of our role. So with that, the book starts with, it's kind of uncanny, but we anchor everything in this book on this acronym VUCA, and many of you might be familiar with it, but it comes from the Army War College, and it's been around for a couple of decades. And it really speaks to the world we're living and working in, where disruption is the new norm. And I'm a big believer that when we can put language to things that feel confusing or unsettling, it helps ground us, and it helps it feel a little bit more tangible, and it helps us find a path forward. And in the last several years, you certainly can't pick up a business book or business article where they're not either spelling out VUCA or talking about the characteristics of VUCA. And let's just be real that this COVID-19 pandemic is VUCA to the extreme. I mean, if we didn't believe that we were living and working in a VUCA world, it's now. And there's a lot of great things that come with it. There's technological advances, you know, people are learning how to use Zoom and other things and grow and really evolve our society. And there's also unintended consequences that come with it. And so we explore both sides of these in the book. And when we think about the VUCA world, there's really two types of challenges that we bump up against as individuals and as collective groups of individuals. Technical challenges are those where there's a known solution. It's tried and true. We can use standard operating procedures, checklists, things we've done before. We can apply it here. We're pretty sure we're going to get that same result, and we're off and running. And it's a fairly straightforward solution. We don't have to change our hearts and our minds. We just have to kind of follow procedure. And adaptive challenges, on the other hand, are far more complex. There is no known solution. And in fact, they invoke a sense of loss because they force us to let go of what is familiar and what we've done in the past. And it makes us uncomfortable. And so if you want to look at an incredible space of adaptive challenge, we are in it right now. Every single news briefing or expert you hear says, yes, we've dealt with pandemics before. We've never dealt with something like this before. Yes, we've had national disasters and global disasters. Nothing like this before. We've never been here before. We are in incredible adaptive change space right now. And the problem with it is that as human beings, we are biologically programmed, if you will, to seek out familiarity and to seek out comfort. And adaptive change is the antithesis of that. And so what happens when we're faced with this is that we can either go through it by shifting our mindset, embracing the discomfort, and really finding our own resourcefulness and calling others to greatness to do the same, or we kick in, rebel, and go into self-protective mode, which is what happens more often than not. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. Brene Brown calls it armoring up, right? So we want to hide our inadequacies. We want to hide the fact that we're feeling uncertain. We want to hide the fact that we're scared. We want to pretend we have it all together. And when we show up in this self-protective way where we're not being authentic, where we're not being real, where we're not finding our own resourcefulness, it's not helpful. But now add a bunch of us together in a workplace, in a family, in a community, in a team, and you've got this perfect storm that is going to keep us from being able to meet the demands that a VUCA world is asking of us. And so we got to be aware of this, because this is at the center of what will keep us from being future ready and keep us from being able to thrive. And what happens is that the majority of our workforce feels like they work for an organization that doesn't care about them. So when you have these workforces where people are showing up triggered, they're thinking about themselves, they're focused on the numbers, they're focused on right now, they sometimes intentionally, but many times unintentionally dehumanize the workplace, and it's literally killing people. And you look at what's happening with our COVID-19 situation, and it just illuminates it even more. Here's what's so interesting is I have seen over the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure many of you have these examples of organizations that literally are almost the intentional dehumanization, where they are laying off people as a knee-jerk reaction when they may not need to yet. They haven't thought of a creative solution, right? How, like Bob Chapman talks about, how can we all suffer a little so no one has to suffer a lot? I have seen organizations literally that have the capacity and the ability to let people work from home when all the experts are advising it, yet the schools are closed and they're firing people who can't be in there. I've seen it happen. And then I'm seeing incredible resourcefulness and people rising to the occasion and humanity and leveraging Zoom. And I was saying earlier, my son's Taekwondo school is doing Zoom-based lessons so they can all still be in community, and what some of the schools are doing. And so you're seeing almost both sides of the coin. And I would suggest that how we show up and how we treat people in the face of adversity says a lot about our character and about when we get through this other side, who's still going to be there, and what are the workplaces that are going to be thriving that people are going to work for, and what are the ones that are going to crumble. And so the good news, largely led by the conscious capitalism movement, is there is a rehumanization revolution that is largely underway, and we can learn so much from these organizations that are going about business in a fundamentally different way, with purpose and humanity and looking at all stakeholders, and they're extremely profitable too. It's not a polar opposite. And so really the rest of our book, after we set the stage for what's happening in our VUCA world and the dehumanization, provides this dehumanization antidote of really how can you leverage these principles and these ideas to future-proof your organization, and I would say even your lives. It's your community, it's your family, etc. And so a few years ago, we ended up creating this visual called the Thriving Organization Pyramid, and it was really a discussion guide to try to help organizations understand why might they be struggling. They're trying to put in an employee engagement initiative or a new communication and recognition platform or well-being programs and wondering why they weren't working so well. And we firmly believe that the well-being of individuals and organizations are inextricably interconnected. We call it the fusion. And so this is really a visual of what the fusion looks like. And when an organization doesn't have a good solid base, where there isn't conscious quality human leadership and a human culture and organizational design that really is relevant for the 21st century, where we need these flexible networks of teams versus rigid hierarchies, anything else you try to do is going to struggle a little bit. And in the middle, there's a little bit of overlap with individual well-being. We know that individual purpose is highly correlated with various positive health outcomes, and we know that we're social beings and we want to be in relationships, and we know that we want to have a supportive climate with deliberate practices that allow people to live your organization's purpose, and the list goes on. And we know that in order for us to show up as our best selves, we have to take care of ourselves. And so the book actually is organized by the pyramid, and each chapter takes a section of this pyramid and starts to tell stories of some of our amazing panel that's here and others that are doing really good work in this space, and then invites you to put tactical steps in place. We have a summary at the end of each chapter of what can you do at this stage of the pyramid to lead and influence positive change. And so with that, we anchor all of this on a definition of leadership that recognizes that it's fundamentally about us maximizing our positive impact around us by becoming our best, fully authentic selves and supporting those around us to do the same. So leadership is a behavior, it's not a title or a role. And I would say that in today's times especially, we need everybody to be showing up as a leader. And so a lot of this book really looks at how can you do that and stop the self-limiting narrative that keeps you from showing up as a leader. And so in order to do that, we need to understand these two different games of leadership. And Bob Anderson and Bill Adams talk about this in terms of the inner game versus the outer game of leadership. So the inner game is our mindset and our narrative and our meeting making system and our emotional intelligence and all of those things. And that fundamentally is critically important. It's the narratives we tell ourselves, and it's what guides all of our behaviors. And the outer game is also important. It's our skills and our competencies and our capabilities. Here's the thing, the inner game runs the outer game. And so a lot of times we try to tend to this outer game. We try to just give people knowledge, or we try to teach them a skill-based workshop, or we give them more stuff to do, but we haven't helped them mature that inner game where they can actually apply this stuff well. We basically are taking a technical fix for what's an adaptive solution. And so when we think about being able to thrive in this VUCA world, we have to start paying more attention to that inner game, because we have a fundamental gap that's keeping us from where we want to go. And Anderson and Adams refer to this inner game as our inner operating system. And it can be run by two different mindsets. The first is what they call the reactive mind. So when we are operating from the reactive mind, we are operating in a fear-based, armored, self-protective mode. It all starts with a problem or threat. So take COVID-19. It's a huge problem, huge threat. And so when we are in a reactive mode, we're afraid based on that problem or threat, and then we just kind of react. We're not pausing, we're not thinking, we're not necessarily making the best decisions that will help us in the long term. It's very, very reactive. And their research has found, guess what? This isn't helpful for individuals, nor is it helpful for organizations. This is when we are showing up in self-protective armored mode. The other structure of our inner operating system, they call the creative mind. And this is where, yes, there's still that COVID-19 is still out there. Yes, there's still fear. Yes, there's still anxiety. But we have clarity of purpose and vision beyond that fear and anxiety. And we can see through to the other side. And that fuels a passion of how can we be better on the other side of this? And how can we be more connected as a community? And then that fuels deliberate, intentional action rather than reactivity. And you know what? People and organizations that have more of this creative mind structure fare far better. And so when you look at the research of where we're at as a society, that the reality is almost 70% of us are operating more from that reactive mind structure. Yet our VUCA world is demanding that we show up with a creative mind structure. And so a lot of this book is looking at how can we start to do our own work and support others to upgrade that inner operating system so that we can close the gap of where the world needs us to be and where we currently are, and we can have that positive impact. And so then the rest of the book anchors on these 5 rehumanizing principles that are woven throughout everything. And these really are interconnected principles that are key for us to navigate these waters of this VUCA environment and to really create future-ready teams, families, workplaces, etc. And so I'm going to go through each one of these with you today, and then we're going to turn it over to the panel, and I'm going to ask them kind of how they are really embodying these rehumanizing principles in their work. So the first rehumanizing principle is build a lighthouse. Think about what a lighthouse does. It cuts through the fog, and even with really stormy waters, right, you can see a path forward, see where you want to go. Building a lighthouse is that purpose, right, that fuels that creative mind inner operating system. So as an organization, if you already have a clear purpose, then you need to ask yourself, do you also have clear core values that you have operationalized? There are clear behavioral anchors that everybody understands. They know how they fit in the picture that's going to help get you through this time and any other challenges that come your way. And if you haven't done that work, it's really, really critical to do that, because otherwise people are swirling. And on an individual level, are you clear about your purpose and your core values? I will tell you that they both matter. Individually, when I am feeling anxious and I'm struggling, when I can anchor myself in my purpose and my core values, it helps almost bring that sense of groundedness and calm, where I can then go, okay, what's next? And I can operate more from that creative mind structure than reactivity. And with organizations, it does the same. And so it's really everything that's involved with having clarity of what's expected of you, of what matters to you, of what's going to move beyond the immediate fear and the immediate problem so that you can see out on the horizon. Then the second rehumanizing principle is creating fearless environments. So this is where physical safety is important, but this is where psychological safety comes in. So we know that a VUCA world triggers us to want to self-protect. Yet we need people to bring forward their creative ideas, resourcefulness like they've never had to before. We need them to speak up when something isn't right. We need them to speak up when they have a concern. And so this is all about creating psychologically safe spaces where people can be real. This is not about rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. This is about reality, right? And can we be real? And can we say, you know, I'm struggling today? Can we say, you know, I don't know? Or I don't know how to move forward, right? And we can support one another in being real and being human, and then finding a path forward. And then the third rehumanizing principle is wade in the messy middle. Human beings are very complex. We are messy. I tell you what, if there was a fast forward button to not have to go through the junk in the middle, I would be the first in line, right? But going through the middle of the mess, while it's unsettling and uncomfortable and stressful, there's growth on the other side of that. And so we have to stop trying to shortcut and short circuit this. We can't upgrade our inner operating system with quick fixes. We have got to make it safe for people to do the work to challenge their self-limiting narrative that keeps them safe and small, that keeps them armored, and that keeps teams from growing and doing what they need to do. And we can't really wait in the messy middle if we don't have a fearless environment to do it. So again, they go hand in hand. And then this brings us to rehumanizing principle number 4, which is show up as a leader. I already shared with you our definition of leadership. We all have an opportunity to show up as leaders in our lives everywhere. And we can't do that if we haven't done our own work to wait in the messy middle. And I hear over and over people say things like, oh, well, I'm just a fill in the blank, right? I'm just a HR person or a this person or this person. And one, we need to remove the just from our language, because everyone is an amazing human being and has potential. And two, this was a huge eye-opener for us with this book. And I know that with conscious capitalism, there's huge efforts on having CEOs who lead different businesses, and that's awesome. And what we've also learned is, guess what? CEO support, yes, it's helpful. Yes, it matters. But you know what? It's not a deal breaker. Because here's the thing, psychological safety and culture ultimately reside at the team level. And so if you can show up as a leader and start to create a fearless environment around you, you can start to have a ripple effect, and you can literally transform a workplace one team at a time. It's the same concept as grassroots organizing. And we've seen it happen over and over. And so we talk about this in the book too. So it's even rethinking, how can you have that ripple effect and show up as a leader? It's recognizing, start with your own family, start with your own community, start with your own team. And so we talk about that in the book as well. And so all of the tips are, how can you show up as a leader at this stage and influence and lead positive change? And then finally, the 5th rehumanizing principle is find your tribe. And this is not go seek out people who are like you because they're comfortable. This is about building and nurturing community. This is about seeking out people who are different than you and realizing that we are biologically programmed to be in relationship and be in community. And in this age of social distancing, although I love other language I've heard of social solidarity and social respect, and even, I can't remember if it's Wisconsin or one of the states is doing safer at home rather than shelter in place, and just really being mindful of our language and how can we still feel very much connected and very much in community, because this isn't a solo journey. You don't transform a community or a workplace or a team one person at a time. You do it one person at a time, but it takes a village. And so this is all about how do you build and foster and nurture community. And so with those 5 principles in mind, kind of our take-home message with this book is that rehumanizing workplaces and communities can be done, and it needs to be done. It does not have to start at the C-suite, and that we can really start to build a critical mass, one person and one team at a time. And so I hope that you all, if you haven't ordered the book, will. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Bulk orders of 25 or more are directly through Conscious Capitalism Press. We'll put this in a follow-up email with the recording link. But just super, super excited about the early response we've already received to this. And so with that, I am really, really excited that we have an amazing panel with us of 7 of the people that we were able to interview for the book who graciously decided to be with us tonight. And so originally we were going to talk specifically about some of the things they talked about in the book, and given what's happening in our world, I kind of tweaked it on them a little bit and want to really talk about how they're showing up today. And so with that panel, and I just want to make sure that Carley made it with us, and it looks like she did. So Carley, are you able to, let's see, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, perfect. So Carley is our first panelist, and Carley is just this amazing, amazing force. And you can see her bio here. And so Carley, I'm going to ask you the first question, but I just want to double check. Can you hear me? And can we hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Awesome. Okay. Fantastic.
Did you want my video on, or is this good?
If you could turn your video on, that would be awesome. We would love to see you. Okay. So, okay. We don't want you to be incognito. There she is. Okay, yay. So Carley, so first of all, in the book, you discuss your own leadership journey and how you even kind of struggled with that word, but really finding your own authenticity, right, as a leader. And then another thing that we talk about in the book, because you're in there in kind of 2 different spots, is we talk about how important diversity, equity, and inclusion is, and if we're going to have a truly human workplace. And you work with a group of people who I would call the usually forgotten, and in this mix. And I know this pandemic has really hit you and them hard. And so I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit tonight about what you're learning about yourself as a leader through all of this, and then how you're navigating this new reality and supporting the youth that you serve.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this. I think for me personally as a leader, I'm learning a lot about flexibility, and maybe adaptability is a better word. I think we probably all know someone who leads a company, or who maybe is that person themselves, that like just can't change as the market changes or the industry changes. Maybe a relatable example for some of you is I come from the nonprofit world and worked with a lot of executive directors that were older and just could not seem to wrap their heads around social media and the importance of like moving into the digital age. And that was frustrating. It's like, you have to do this. It's where everything is happening now. And I swore I would like never be that person who didn't listen to their team or adapt. And now as an executive director myself, I get it, because there's a lot of like safety in doing what you've done or what's worked, or like wanting to stick to the plan. I think there's like comfort in that. And sometimes the plan gets blown up, as has happened in the last week. And so I think I'm just learning, like, it's kind of scary to adapt and change, because you have your one way of doing things and now it's completely different. You have to kind of lead the way with risk, and that's just scary. So just like a short history of Wildflyer is that we are a nonprofit coffee company, and we employ homeless youth. And this has been my vision and like my baby, so to speak, for about 10 years now. And we started in 2017 as a small mobile cart, and we had just finished at the end of last year our fundraising for the Capitol to get our own coffee shop. And after 5 months of searching, we actually were prepared to sign a lease last week on a shop. And then on last Monday, just kind of felt like everything fell apart pretty quick. The shop is on hold. I had to let go 2 of our new team members. So it felt like we had like a lot of promising growth, and now a lot of that's just on hold, or we're just really uncertain about the future. And so I feel like kind of just in that one day, we really had to just pivot our whole business, because our vision is to end youth homelessness. We just had to figure out how to do that when the way we thought we were going to do it wasn't happening. And so we kind of scrapped our marketing and sales plan, and we decided we had to do a lot more in the online sector, which we had been doing, but it just wasn't a focus. And that's just all you can do right now. And so we put it out that we are like trying to still employ youth through our online sales. They can help with packaging. And last week we actually had the largest order of online sales we've ever had. And that was
awesome.
Great. Yes, we have a really wonderful community who's still supportive. So yeah, I woke up on Monday as the head of a retail coffee operation and went to bed as the head of an online coffee operation. So it was just a really big pivot, and I had to get out of my own way a lot, because my dream and vision is obviously really for the coffee shop. But that's just not where we're at right now with the industry. And I've always loved the quote from our friend Jeff at Amazon, and I know Amazon has its issues, but he always says to be stubborn on vision and flexible on details. And I like say that, and now I'm just really having to live it, because things are always changing, and so we just have to adapt. And I think for all of us, we want our businesses to make it through this. And so I think just finding the thing you do, we end youth homelessness, and we are doing that in a different way than I thought we were going to be doing it last week. But that's the details that we can be flexible on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's so much in that I love, because I think it speaks to, right, how we teed it up, you're moving beyond that reactive mind to that creative, right? It's that, okay, like, yes, the details had to change, and you can't bring people, maybe you could solve the coffee shop later, right? But when you're like, if this is what we're about, how can we be resourceful? How can we boost online sales and use them this way versus the selling at the coffee cart? And so I'm so excited, first of all, to hear you had a really good week, because that's awesome. And yeah, and so I'm just curious, like, is there anything, what are you learning? I mean, it's an ongoing, but is there something key that you're learning about yourself through all of this as a leader?
Yes. I don't want this to come off as arrogant. It's been kind of a cool week for me, because if you read the book, you'll see that just struggling with self-doubt has been a huge part of my leadership journey. And I think I have kind of felt like, okay, I have what it takes a little bit. Like, this has been maybe the first time I felt like we're in a huge crisis, and suddenly everyone is looking at me to come up with the answers and to, I don't know, be, like, lead the way a little bit. And I think it's been kind of affirming that I am an adaptable person by nature. And so that's just really been coming through, that, like, yes, I'm passionate about ending youth homelessness, and yes, I feel strongly about how we're going to do it, but we're just continuing to adapt, and I'm able to, like, kind of keep up with all of that and still cast a vision and do some of the hard things that have been required this week, like letting people go. That's the first time I've ever had to do that, and that was awful, even though it's, like, hopefully only temporary. So I think it's just been maybe kind of affirming for me to be like, okay, I rose to the occasion and I'm able to do that. I think by being really, like, true to who I am and kind of playing on my strengths and my own leadership style that I've been able to develop.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yay! Good. Thank you so much, Carley. We'll probably come back to you, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. So our next amazing panelist is, here we go. Here is Tom Schoen from BTM Global. And so, Tom, you shared some just amazing stories about how BTM came to be. But one of the things that you talked about is how BTM is removing interpersonal fear. You really are creating that fearless environment that we talked about. And I would say, gosh, if there's ever a time where that feels even more important, it seems to be now, when fears are at an all-time high just in general. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about why that's so important to BTM's success, but also how you currently are continuing to create that safe space for people to navigate the uncertainties we're facing with this whole COVID-19.
No, thanks, Rosie. Thanks for everyone for having me on. It's an interesting journey for us. We've built in that fearless environment, or the ability to be able to communicate at any level on anything since the beginning of our company, and it's been our DNA. And we've used it for the success of the company, but where I think it's really coming to fruition is what we're going through now. So let me just say a little bit of how we got there. So when I interview people that come to that interview at BTM, or I talk to new employees that maybe I didn't have a chance to interview, I always tell them the same thing, and this is in the book as well. It says that, there's really only one hard and fast rule at BTM, and it's not negotiable. And I always say that, and they kind of look at me like I'm going to say something really difficult. But I tell them, I said, look, I'm paying you for your experience and your skills, and I want to hear your ideas, right? I want to create an environment where you feel comfortable to say just about anything. And they kind of get a sense of relief when they have that. And so we have an environment where everyone feels very comfortable to say anything. And the other way I put it is that a lot of times when you, and everybody's probably experienced this in their previous lives at companies, where somebody walks in, and it can be, an executive, it could be just a difficult person, and that whole meeting just changed when that person walked in. And I'm real happy to say that our company now, I'd come walking in and they might ask if I needed anything, but other than that, they don't care, and they go right on what they're doing. And I do this often only because in my job, it's nice to be able to go and see what real work is, right? Because it's some people that are doing the work that we do, that I like to see that and do that. And so that's the environment we have. And it's been very successful. But in order to make that successful, you first set that expectation, like I said up front. But the second thing you have to do is you have to provide the example for people to do that. So we have what I call ferocious debate amongst friends, where we'll have some pretty interesting discussions, and it can be at any level, and it can be me and anyone, or it could be my team, it could be anybody. And after that, they have this debate and everybody kind of looks at each other and someone cracks a joke or wants to go to lunch, and it's fine, right? So if you can create the environment where people feel comfortable to say anything, you'll get these debates. Because it's my firm belief that it's only through the debate of whatever issue you have, whatever you're doing, is where you get a better answer at the end anyway. So we kind of did that, and then you have to demonstrate that. Now I use humor quite a bit. I have my business partner who's a very different person than I am, and I love him. He's a brother to me, but you know, he's a short, bald Vietnamese guy, and I'm a big, I like the way you put it, Rosie, in the book, slightly overweight white guy. So
that's how you describe yourself.
well, I have to say slightly overweight, you know, but we are very different. We have very obviously very different backgrounds, and we communicate very differently. So we've learned to really kind of say, okay, I understand he doesn't like conflict, he doesn't like that direct approach, but he's a tremendous technical guy, and that's who he is for us, our CTO. Where I'm a little bit more direct and more upfront, and you know, I don't play any kind of a game. I kind of just say it the way it is, and so we complement each other real well with that. So giving that as an example provided us to be able to build leaders in our company that also do that same thing. Then what we did is we had to train people on how people communicate well, right? So it's easy. I've been saying for 30 years that, okay, communication is very important. You have to kind of go where the person's at, and you have to understand where they're going. I've said that a lot, but it's very difficult to always remember to do it. So we trained our company on how people better relate to one another. And that has been tremendous for us. There's a lot of programs out there that you can do that. We chose a program called Insights, because it uses colors, and colors is a very easy way for people to remember. So for example, I'm a very red type person. My business partner is very green, on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so he likes a little bit more of that, you know, let's do it in a nice way, where I'm like, let's do it like right now, like yesterday. So we have these in our company. We have these colors everywhere, and we have a lot of different reminders, and people then have been able to adjust their communication and say, oh God, I know he's green, I got to do it this way. And it's a physical reminder, which then even enhance the ability for people not only to feel comfortable, but also to do it in a way that they'll relate to. The last thing that I would do, and this is where it kind of comes around to today, is by having that type of environment, I'm really reaping the benefits. And it's, Rosie, you said something in the beginning about companies and maybe having everyone suffer a little so nobody suffers a lot. Believe it or not, my VP of finance, she's been telling me something along those lines for a while, and I've been kind of, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to do that. And but she never relented. She kept pushing on it. And it's probably what we're going to do. And it's a right idea. It's the best for everyone. In our company, it's all about the people. That is the most important thing. We provide software services for companies, and you know, I don't have big manufacturing outfit. I don't have a lot of capital equipment. My truly the best asset is the people, and because they felt comfortable talking about this, they're able to give me different ideas, and that's only one idea. I've got 3 or 4 of them of how to manage through this right now without affecting people's lives in a really bad way, and so that's been helpful. So I'm reaping the reward right now, because people are saying, they're throwing out crazy ideas. They're talking about different things in a way that, hey, why don't we look at it this way? Why don't we do it this way? Everyone is doing that. And it's not only just my immediate management team, it's the extended management team, and it's the employees as a whole. And it's really helping us manage through this. And for us, it changes every single day. And there isn't a day that goes by. In fact, I had a call just this afternoon. She goes, I even hate calling you. It's 4:30 and I don't even want to call you about this. And I said, okay, well, let's manage through it. What do we got? Okay, it's not that bad. Let's do this. Let's do this. It enables us to be able to manage through the crisis by having that communication where nobody fears anything at all.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, and you know, really everything you're describing, Tom, is it's that you're an adaptive challenge, and you need everybody's ideas. And so if you didn't have that environment, imagine how stuck you'd be, and just really the amount of resourcefulness that's going to come, and with people feeling like they're in it together versus, you know, they're a casualty. So that it's awesome to hear that. And I so appreciate that approach you're taking.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so next up we have Vikas. So gosh, I met Vikas, I feel like it's almost 10 years ago or something by now. And so when I reached out to him to be in the book, I was super excited. So one of the things that we talk about, the base of the pyramid, is really that organizations that are able to thrive in this VUCA world really intentionally create structures that allow people to be their best rather than these rigid hierarchies. And in the book, we call it freedom with parameters. And your company, because Keyhubs, has really done some amazing work to help understand and map the human networks within organizations. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about your process and really what you've learned that can help companies build more conscious cultures, especially now that many are relying on this virtual environment for now.
Sure. Thank you, Rosie. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here online. I trust that you can all hear me.
Yeah.
So I spent 15 years working for a couple of startups in Minneapolis. They're very successful. But there were definitely times where it felt like I was living in a cartoon, namely Dilbert. And I decided to go back to business school back in 06, 07. And I got introduced to this concept of informal networks, that while we work in hierarchies and hierarchical structures, work is actually getting done through human connection and relationship and trust networks. And for me, this light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, this explains why I've experienced somewhat Dilbert in the workplace and these companies I worked for, is that they didn't understand, leaders didn't take the time to understand this relationship dynamic. The intrinsic networks, we're social animals. We like to have friends at work. But what does the friend network look like? And how might that be informing the culture and how work is getting done and so forth? So, to make a long story short, I ended up starting a company, Keyhubs, that focused on uncovering these networks inside organizations. And since 2010, that's what we've been doing. And to answer your question of what we've discovered, it's essentially what we all know, which is that talent, influence is very much independent of title and status. They rarely match up like the org chart. And not only do leaders struggle with identifying who these positive and negative influencers are in their organization, only about 30 to 40% accurate if you look at the scientific research, social science research, which isn't good if you're trying to go from good to great, for example, and get the right folks on the bus. Not only do leaders struggle with identifying who these hidden gems are in their organization, they're real cultural pillars, leaders struggle with assessing their own influence. They often overestimate their influence. They think they're doing a much better job than they actually are. They think they're influencing in a much more positive way than they actually are. And so these two misidentifications, we talked about the lighthouse. So many leaders and organizations are operating in the fog, in the dark, when it comes to understanding who's really moving the organization forward and who might be hurting it. And so if you don't know who the influencers are in your organization, if you don't understand your own influence as a leader, you don't have that kind of awareness, it's a wonderful recipe for Dilbert. And so our whole mission since we started Keyhubs was to really put a dent in that phenomenon. And we've worked with a lot of different companies, and we've been a lighthouse. I like to think of us as being a lighthouse, and one of our taglines is making the invisible visible. And so, I think it's important for leaders to understand where the real talent is in their organization, where the real influence is, and that's not a top-down phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, it's what we were saying, that, right, everybody has an opportunity to show up and lead and influence positive change. But for organizations, not only do they need to find who that is, they also need to elevate that, right? We need, the people who they might be relying on to do that may not be as effective. I'm curious, do you have thoughts, or with any of your clients of, obviously we're only a week or two into this hecticness with the pandemic and how it's fundamentally altered how we go about work, but what are your thoughts as you think about how work actually gets done, and with some of the groups you've worked with, of how this could help them?
Yeah, it's the same idea. If you think about organizations you've worked in or that you're working in, a lot of times leaders are focused on creating cross-functional collaboration, but they're rarely thinking about cross-hierarchical collaboration. Meaning there's very few teams in organizations where you have someone represented at every layer in the organization. It's always, what tends to happen is we're just operating out, the executives are meeting with the executives, the directors are meeting with the directors, and so forth. And so I think at any time in an organization's journey, but especially during this very volatile time, it's important to understand who those influencers are throughout the hierarchy, and engaging them, bringing them together, and ensuring that they have a voice at the table, that you're listening to them, because they're the ones who are connected to everyone. And it's usually 5% of the organization that is connected to everyone. They have a sense of what's going on in the organization, but those 5% are scattered through the hierarchy. A couple of them might be at the top, but a lot of them are, at the bottom of the org chart. And there's just not a lot of common practice. It's not a conventional practice for leaders to bring those influencers together on a regular basis and engage with them and develop them and make sure that they're in line of sight. They're in each other's line of sight, So I think organizations can become much more effective, much more efficient, much more agile, much more aligned, simply by tapping those 4 or 5% of the organization that are highly connected and that touch all parts of the organization, and bringing them together and make sure that you're rowing in the same direction. So much of organizational dysfunction and deliberate is simply that everyone's in the boat together, but they're rowing in different directions.
Yeah. What came up for me, I love the Dilbert cartoons, but that what you're talking about is being mindful and deliberate to really create the ultimate structure, if you will, to leverage people's resourcefulness and be able to navigate the adaptive challenges that not just we're facing today, but tomorrow.
Yeah, I think what I would say is it's less about creating the ultimate structure. I would say it's uncovering the structure that is there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And then maybe supporting it better, right? Maybe
Yeah,
that's what I mean
leveraging
by the structure to support it and leverage it. Yeah.
Exactly. Become aware of it, shine the light, and then, be fearless about it, because there will be surprises.
Yeah.
And then lift up those leaders.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure there'll be questions for you. So thanks, Vikas.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so moving on to our next panelist, Nancy. What do I say about Nancy? Is just a spitfire of amazing positive energy, and just love her. I love all of our panelists, but Nancy, just when you read the book, just shared so much about just what transformed her. And so Nancy, with Envision, you've really talked about how you've broken the mold for IT in terms of what it means to be a conscious business, and really saying we are going to build this as a forms of endearment, or I'm not going to do it. And this really stemmed on you kind of having your own awakening, if you will, and going on your own waiting in the messy middle inner conscious leadership journey, and paving a new path, not just for yourself, but really for where your industry has been and what's possible and where it could be. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about the awakening you had personally and as a leader, and really how that is not just shaping Envision today, but really especially given the unprecedented challenges that we're facing today.
Sure. Well, thank you, Rosie. Thanks for inviting us to be in the book. Thank you for writing the book. It's such an important book. The content is so important. I hope everyone that's on this webinar tonight, or this event tonight, this virtual event, will share it, because it's a combination. You really have tangible information in there that's actionable, and then the stories just help make it relatable. So thank you for putting the book out there. So our story, and thank you, by the way. Personal story. So just why at least I became fiercely dedicated to helping to build a conscious company, and dedicating certainly my experience and expertise and passion only for a conscious business go forward. And because I think, the messy middle you mentioned, you kind of sometimes being in something that's not your truth for so long pushes you ultimately to the path that it is. So just some context about the technology and technology industry, and certainly our swim lane, is that it's a pretty tough industry, right? Sometimes we say take Wall Street and turn it up about 10 decibels, and you get to the technology industry, which is pretty vast. So again, I'll kind of speak to our swim lane. But there's a lot of M&As, right? Almost everyone's in it for the short game, right? Everyone wants to exit. And because of the success of the industry, oftentimes when people invest in a company, they expect quick returns and huge returns, right? The expectations are just nuts. And that's frankly how I grew up in the industry. 4'10" female with stereotypically a bunch of skinny white guys, which you talk about in the book, stereotypically. And you know, when you're in it, it's just really competitive, like I said, and almost most companies are in it to exit. So what do? They, you know, they really set really big goals, right? And then oftentimes folks will put in manufactured carrots and sticks to drive folks' behavior and manipulate just to get the numbers, right? They'll pump it up the company to sell, and then the company will sell. And then the new, the acquiring firm will have huge expectations because that's what the company was sold on, right? And then the people left need to meet those expectations. So that's kind of where we were. Many years ago, I was with a good company, helped build it, met my business partner there, my brother from another mother, Bill Crane, and we helped build this great company. It was a really good company. I built it from the business development side, him on the technical side. And then a new leader was brought in to, you know, to get it ready to sell. And then it sold, and it sold to private equity. That was stereotypical, kind of the stereotypical PE firm that is shareholder value only, right? And we really just saw kind of it was like seeing your baby being ripped apart, right? Limb by limb. It was just heartbreaking. At the time of acquisition, we had over 120 engineers. I think less than 2 years later, we had less than 10. And you know, even though in all of that, we were still killing it, right? We were hard driving and still making the numbers and doing everything. And it was interesting because I was not a conscious leader at all. And I didn't even know to work at it. I didn't know what it was. So one day I was talking to someone about a problem I had. And of course I wasn't asking for help at the time because I didn't do that then. And this person said to me, Nancy, just listen to your gut. You'll find your answer there. So I thought, I'm a problem solver. I'll figure this out. So what I'll do, I'll figure out what this gut thing is. I'll investigate, I'll find out what it is, and I'll have my answer. Well, what that turned into was it turned into a little bit of soul searching and a search for my intuition. And what was that? And I started asking myself some of the big questions. And frankly, that was when I kind of woke up a little bit. So luckily, nothing too dramatic for that first step. But I'm a slow learner, as you know, Rosie. So. That was the first one. And that kind of started just a personal growth journey for me, right? Asking myself, like I said, the big questions. Why am I here? What's my purpose? All of that stuff. And that became my side hustle. So I just studied like you wouldn't believe, just studying and studying and studying and studying outside of work hours. I was getting a PhD in personal growth. And then I found myself kind of at this crossroads in that now I was in this really unconscious company, driving my, you know, expecting as much of other people as I expected of myself, which is a lot. And yet outside of work, I was kind of recognizing there's more to life, right? So realizing, holy cow, here we are, all of us. It's almost like walking into a beautiful poppy field and then realizing it's poison poppies, right? You don't know it till you're in it. And then I said to my husband one day, as I was so conflicted, I said, honey, my gosh, I'm really conflicted. I go into work all day and I can't do this. I think I need to, you know, and then I come home and I'm living almost this double life. I think I got to go meditate in a mountain in Nepal or something, to which he said, no. So I was really conflicted. And then it just kind of going through the motions and trying to figure out what's next. And then there was the second piece of kind of the pivot, the real pivot for me was one day I walked in and I mentioned my brother from another mother, Bill Crane, my business partner. So between the two of us, kind of like y'all were talking, everybody has a partner, we're a little bit different. You know, I'm a little more animated. And Bill is kind of the rock, right? He's stoic, solid, and reserved, and just the rock. And at that time, more and more and more stuff was just being piled onto us. And, he just took it on and then would execute and perform, and, you wouldn't know a thing. Well, one day he walked into the office and I didn't recognize him. He had developed Bell's palsy, a textbook case of Bell's palsy, and as a result from stress. And that is when, half of the face is paralyzed. And so I saw this face, and I had trouble recognizing him. But worst of all is I could tell he was in a lot of pain. And that's when that was my big wake up call, and said, absolutely never again, never again. And he recovered, just textbook. But that was when I said, Bill, we got to do something else. And he agreed, it was time. That was the big, big wake up call. And then within a couple of weeks after that, as serendipity would have it, or the universe would have it, whatever you want to say, the book Firms of Endearment found its way to me, and I read it. And that was just such an inspiration, because it showed me that, oh my gosh, there could be a different way, right? Maybe we could have a conscious company in this industry. Wait a minute, maybe this is possible. I shared it with Bill right away, and he read through it just as fast as I did and was inspired as well. And then again, as fate would have it, just several weeks later, but weeks, not months, weeks later, we met a young man named Bo Smithback, who was the founder of Envision, and young, brilliant, and kind. And actually, we ended up meeting each other because I was doing a favor for one of my team, and he was doing a favor for one of his team. And we ended up meeting, and all we talked about was he told me about Envision. I told him about myself and Bill and what we want to do. Gave him the book Firms of Endearment. Said, this is what we want to build. He said, that's what I want my company to be. Come do it. And we did. And what we learned was, we brought so many years of experience. He brought a beautiful young company with the best of intentions and a brilliant technical mind. And we all had this commonality to care for people, right? Bill and I were passionate about building a company, a conscious company that was a caring company. So we took a lot of time to define our purpose, our lighthouse, which is to enrich the lives of our stakeholders. And then finding people that really care about that, right? So we're a technology company. We're technology consultants focusing on optimization that start with the end user, right? So folks that join us really are passionate, not just about technology, but how technology helps people, right? So they're intrinsically motivated. And it's funny because in the old world, we saw all these manufactured carrots and sticks, right? That had kind of a domino effect of badness, that ultimately these carrots and sticks would drive behavior that would ultimately create a toxic culture, hurt the reputation of the individuals and the company, right? And put out poor quality of product. And what we found with our business model, again, focused completely, starting with our purpose, the lighthouse, starting with that and then operationalizing everything with that, finding people intrinsically motivated to help people and then care for them. Everything in kind of our go-to-market is so different from the rest of the industry. So we're in it for the long haul. We don't have an exit strategy. And when you have that, and we don't plan to ever have one, right? When you're planning for the long haul, you don't have to manufacture, you don't have carrots and sticks, right? You care for people and people that care about the mission, and hopefully inspire them naturally. So what we have learned through all of this is the positive effect of dominoes, right? And the good that comes as far as enriching Envisioners' whole lives, and then them being able to do that beyond Envision and out into the world. And what we've learned too is, ultimately from that is, cared for people, care for people. Yeah.
So how is that, I love that so much, but how is that, so what are you finding, how is that helping you better navigate what's going on right now?
Yeah, great question. So, what's interesting is right now, our our business is really busy, because one of our competencies, one of the things we do really well is technologically enable remote work, right? And one of the things that helps us right now is with our culture, right? Which is we work to maintain a conscious culture, and that's constant work, right? That doesn't happen naturally. Over time it does, but we have a constant dialogue with Envisioners, a constant dialogue. You know, what does support from us look like for you, right? Because what we're realizing with all of our stakeholders is the current circumstances of COVID-19 mean different things to everybody. It's affecting people differently. There's no broad stroke to anybody. And so for us here at Envision, for Envisioners, it's that constant dialogue, and we're asking individually and however people feel comfortable in sharing, but how is this affecting you? And how can we support you through this, right? What does support look like for you? Yeah. And however we can help folks, we are. And that's also true with our clients, because again, there's no broad strokes, right? So everything looks a little different. So we say, you know, God gave us two of these, one of these. How about if we listen and then help however we can? Does that?
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And you know what I think about is, you know, people will remember how they were treated, right? And remember and especially in tough times. And so I think that's only going to, right? I mean, it's only going to benefit. So I just so appreciate the intentionality that you're taking and modeling the way. So thank you so much.
I'll mention one thing. It's not just, to your points earlier, it's not just leadership, it's Envisioners listening to each other, right?
Nice.
And
yeah.
each other. It's not top down. It certainly, we are trying to take care of folks, everybody, but it's each other taking care of each other, which is really inspiring to experience.
Yeah, well, it speaks to the intentionality you put to that conscious culture aspect of it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. And so while we're on the technology trajectory, I am now excited to introduce Curtis Hite, and I just realized there's a typo on that slide. Okay, so improving is part of getting together actually this chapter of conscious capitalism. So we talk about you in several different spots in the book, and Curtis, you were so forthcoming with kind of sharing your story, and we know, as we've been talking about with the Lighthouse, that greater purpose is a hallmark of a human business, and that purpose can only be realized with very deliberate practices. And so one of the things that really struck me about improving is just really how intentional and deliberate you are about the practices that you have in place to ensure that purpose is realized. And you have many locations, and you're just you don't leave it to chance. There's a lot of intentionality behind it. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how you've been maintaining this intentional, conscious culture, and then what, if anything, has changed given our current COVID-19 reality.
Well, thank you, Rosie. I want to speak on deliberate practice first. A hallmark saying inside of our organization is vision without execution is hallucination. And I think that's very important to understand, because we are in a highly educated industry. And we are with very smart people, not just the leaders. Everybody in our organization is very intelligent, has great ideas. And we do not ever lack good ideas. But what happens is we can get distracted with focus, and we can also be distracted without remaining committed to the initiatives that we begin. And one of those many deliberate practices, or actually we have several deliberate practices around our purpose. And our purpose, like a few of the other panelists, we are an IT company, service provider. And one of the things that struck me at a Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit almost a decade ago now was I was listening to the keynote, and they made a comment that only sales professionals had a worse perception amongst CEOs than IT professionals. And I just happen to be an IT professional. I'm a software engineer by background, but at this time in my career, I was a business development professional. So I won first and second place in this race that you really don't want to win. And it bothered me, and I had the initial defensive reaction to that. But in the end, I kind of owned it, meaning as a community, our industry has earned that perception. And what are we going to do about it? And our purpose is rooted in changing that perception. And it's rooted in changing that perception with trust and building environments of trust with all of our stakeholders. And when we really are rallying behind this, it's one thing to say that. It's one thing to have a landing page on our website where you have to figure out what we do, because when you land on our website, it simply says trust changes everything. It doesn't say what we do, who our clients are. It literally lands with our purpose there, and you have to go figure it out. And I'm okay with that. But what are we doing inside to make sure we live into an ambition, a purpose that is very admirable, because there's almost no way that we can never fail, that you will always be in an environment where you could potentially fail in this. And the first things, deliberate practices around education. Okay, we have a book that but everybody is expected. So the deliberate practices around this are taking this class, and each of the presidents are tracked on the employees taking the Speed of Trust class, where you learn the language, the 13 behaviors, but it doesn't stop there. After you take the class, there are these trust huddles, these trust groups that might be across different parts of the organization sometimes, or sometimes within a particular group. And every week they are focusing on a trust behavior, and they learn the language of the trust. They know that when we talk about things, whether it's talking straight, or whether it's practicing accountability, or whether it's extending trust, right? All of these behaviors become familiar across the entire organization. And it takes this weekly activity, relentless activity across the board. And it's something that we have not given up on for 4+ years now, as we really leaned into these initiatives. We have daily stand-up meetings across all of our offices, and part of those stand-ups on many of the offices is one day is dedicated to lifting up people who are exemplifying our values. So one day, every week of the year for 4 or 5 years, another deliberate practice stating these trust behaviors, stating how others, lifting up how others have been a great example of these within our own organization, or with regards to our stakeholders. And what I can say is that while these are just 2 of the deliberate practices, or 3, we probably have 5 or 6 around these. And this is not, while it is a top-down initiative inside of improving, it does not have to be a top-down initiative inside your organization. You know, often, and it surprised me, a lot of organizations state their values. Well, what are you doing to live out those values? A leader, any place in the organization, can take 15 minutes a day to talk about those values, live into them every single day with their team. It does not take a top-down initiative on these. The guiding principles are there to become a guiding principle. And Rosie, I'll answer the last part of your question. How does this guide us, or how is the current environment affecting this? Well, one, I hope that it is preparing our individuals. We, like many companies, this is a very, very hard time for a lot of companies. We have clients that are in the travel and transportation, right? And that was a sector that we have millions of hours of experience in. these companies are reeling. And these companies are coming to us. One of them, and I'll say there's a little bit of, they've shown loyalty, been with us for 10, 11 years, proactively going to them, demonstrating respect, showing our own loyalty to them. These are trust behaviors, but really creating an environment where we expose ourselves, where we offered to take cuts, where we're not making money on this client, but they're gushing money. And by doing so, the irony behind that act is that this particular company let go over 500 contractors, and you can't blame them. I don't blame them. They're not being unconscious leaders because they laid off people. Their business is in a fight for life. And they are protecting what they can protect, the jobs, some jobs at least in their business. But that affects a lot of companies. And while our company was affected because of the relationship, this relationship built in trust, that I believe that played a significant role and reason why we were retained as a client. But there's a lot of tough decisions that not only our companies have to make. And if they had their guiding principles that were fundamentally part of their being, like we aspire, like we have, they start to guide your actions. You know, we're going over our business continuity plans, and the first thing I have is our entire guiding principles up there. And I say, we will review these guiding principles before we go into any more of our plans. So how do we deliberately get these purpose, our culture, our values in front of people? And there are so many ways to do that. And that's what we've done, and hopefully it will serve us. I got a text from the person that leads this initiative while we're on there, and it says the work we have been doing with trust is pretty blatantly apparent given the circumstances. These are sad circumstances, but also encouraging. I that dinged on my phone at 46 minutes ago, and I just loved that we got that timely input during the.
That's awesome. Well, it reminds me of with one of our clients that we also talk about in the book that's not on with us tonight, but we were talking about some deliberate practices moving forward as they're navigating this space. And they said, can you imagine if we hadn't been doing the work we've been doing with culture and with clarity of our why and clarity of our purpose and whatnot, like we would be swirling right now. So that lighthouse and that deliberate, like I wrote down your quote, right? Vision without execution is hallucination. I love that, but I love that intentionality. So thank you so much, Curtis.
Thank you.
And Eric, so slightly different industry that might not think about, Miron construction. And, you know, we talk about how in the book, how conscious and human businesses really place great intentionality, not just with purposes we've been hearing, but also with how they communicate with people and being mindful of their language. And what we talk about was what you were speaking to, Nancy, the importance of listening, right? And that listening is so important, more so than even how we talk. And so, you know, in an industry, I would say historically, or stereotypically construction that typically avoids anything, you know, touchy-feely. You know, Eric, you have a pretty unique role at Miron Construction as their dream coach. And I'm wondering if you can maybe share a little bit about the dream project and the difference that it's making at Miron and in this industry, especially in our current, call it VUCA extreme environment.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. And it is exciting to be a dream coach for a construction company because you put those two pieces together and a lot of people look at you funny, like, really, what is that? And I jokingly tell people, if I'm doing my job well, I'm not doing much. And if you follow the true coaching principles, a coach is really there to create that safe space, that non-judgmental space for people to share their thoughts, their feelings, those ideas, and really to try some of their ideas on for the first time. And so if I simplify it a little bit more, I'm a life and leadership coach, and it really spawned from the book, The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly, which was brought to our leadership by someone who was in pre-construction that just had innovative thoughts and said, you know what, I'm going to take this to our owners. And the owners said, you know, dreams is one of our drivers, and we build the dreams of others. So how are we doing that within? How are we building the dreams of the individuals within our organization? And at that point, they moved forward and said, you know what, we're going to start the Dream Project. So I'm version 2.0. I moved into the role in 2015. So it's almost 5 years here into the role as Miron's Dream Coach. And I'm honored to really have, and this word sounds interesting in the construction world, some of the most intimate conversations with people of anyone in the organization. And I say that because I'm hearing things that people are saying for the first time. They haven't shared them with their friends, their spouse, and I get to hear them first, which is really neat. And just to see the energy that people, you know, share when they first say something out loud and they connect with it and they're like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Or, wow, now that I said that out loud, I don't know about that. But really providing that space for people to share those thoughts, share those ideas. And what started out as a lot of bucket list items has really moved into a lot of that working with relationships, you know, confidence. And then when it first started, you could only meet with the Dream Coach around something personal. It couldn't even be professional. We've changed that a little bit. But the reason for that in the beginning was the organization said, we want people to know that this is not here to grow the company. This is to grow the people within the company. And that the second piece will come, but you can't even work with the Dream Coach on anything professional. It's here to be to grow personally. So as we realize that, or as more and more people accepted the fact that, hey, I don't have to have a work-related reason to work with the Dream Coach. And by the way, you get to meet with the Dream Coach on work time and there's no charge to use it. So it's one of those things, hey, if you have something that's going on, come talk to Eric. And Rosie, as you had mentioned, you know, yeah, one team at a time, you can really work to change that culture. I really take a look at this as one conversation at a time with the individuals that I get to meet with helps change that culture. So I'm lucky to be in that space and have those conversations. And as we take a look at that current situation, and you talk about communication within our organization, so having the right words, but also that listening piece, it was interesting as COVID-19 hit, our organization formed a task force right away. And the goal was to have consistent communication daily for everyone about, are we working? Where are we working? Who's working from home? What's going on? What are the CDC guidelines? And they said, you know what? I was putting a message together and I ended up working with my tribe, as you use that word. A couple of the people that I work closely with on my culture team, I call them, are our wellness coordinator as well as our training and development manager, and put together some ideas. At first it was going to be an email and then it was a video. And our task force said, Eric, we heard you're doing this video. Can we include this with the COVID task force updates? So we really took all of the technical information of what was going on and said, we can't lose the personal part of it. And the message I really put out, challenged people in this time and recognize what was going on and said, this is your opportunity to look inward. This is your opportunity to begin to see, how do you want to grow? What's different as there's a lot of disruption here. What could be different? And an opportunity to reach out to me as that Dream Coach, but not just me. It's that opportunity to connect a little bit more with a peer, a significant other, a sibling, a child. And the second piece of that challenge was, can we take the time to listen a little bit more than what we have in the past? We have that opportunity right now. And they said, you know what, that's just as important as all of the other information going out. We need to have that personal side. And that was really neat to see. And the exciting part is it was followed up the next day with an article written from one of my other peers around how do we keep our mental state where we need it to be during these times. So it's really partnering that technical piece of things with that personal piece of things. Yeah. And the coaching conversations I've been having lately have shifted a little bit. For some, it's a safe place to have a conversation just to validate feelings or to have a connection with someone you know cares when things feel a little bit unfamiliar. And our wellness coordinator shared an acronym with me that I shared in the video, but it's WIN, and it's what's important now. And it's interesting as I look at the conversations I'm having with people right now, including one I had this week where the individual I was working with, we were focusing a lot on vacation planning. And really what it was is, how do I make sure I schedule me time? How do I get me time? Because otherwise it's work, it's all these things. And how do I get me time? And it naturally shifted into a new space for this individual. And they said, you know what? I'm realizing there's more of an introvert in me than I thought. And I am embracing and loving my me time that's unstructured. And what I'd really like to think about, Eric, is after all of this COVID-19 stuff is done, how do I make sure that I keep that a priority, that me time that's unstructured a priority? And how do we work with that? And I think in any situation, in my personal view on it, there's always a gift somewhere. And I think the future gift I'm seeing, at least in some of the conversations with the people I'm coaching, is it's okay to say no. It's okay to reduce some of the busyness. So as challenging as the situation is, there's this gift that I'm potentially seeing coming from it, at least in the coaching conversations I'm having, of how do I continue to say no in spaces that maybe I wouldn't have before, and say yes to unstructured time or unstructured me time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great piece moving forward.
Yeah, well, and I love that I love that with the message going out that you are including the humanity, because I think that gets lost a lot. And I love that you're inviting people, because you've created this awareness and this culture, right, about this, that you're inviting them to look inward at this time, because that is, it can be uncomfortable to do that, but it also is one of those unexpected gifts that we can use with stuff like this to really look inward. So thank you for doing that and reminding us all of that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having us in the book.
Yes, you're welcome. And last but not least, ray of sunshine, Tasha. So Tasha is with Y Scouts, and they really are all about hiring on purpose. And I think you said, it's finding people, matching them with work that lets their hearts sing. And I love that so much. And so when a company is intentional about its culture and purpose and leadership and stakeholders, that means it also has to be very purposeful about how it hires. And my experience, I will say, of most recruiting is it's a numbers game rather than a people game. And it's all about getting those placements and maybe overselling the job. And it loses that human experience. And Y Scouts really is breaking the mold and taking an incredibly different approach. And I'm curious with what's going on now, right? How are you navigating that space, and how are you leveraging the strengths of that purposeful humanity of Y Scouts to help you and help your clients during this incredibly disruptive, unsettling time?
Thank you, Rosie. It's a great question, and one I think that we're revisiting every day, every hour, every minute right now to see, are we being the help to our clients, to the candidates, to our community, to our teams that we need to be now. I jotted down that win, what's important now, looking at, what is the thing that we can do, as we're really precise about our lighthouse, right? That why that Curtis talked about, like our why is in our name. We're looking for the why, we're scouting for the why for people, and the connections that we have to our different stakeholder groups are more important now than ever. And, thinking about traditional recruiting as that numbers game, I was drawn to your description of the technical versus the adaptive, right? That traditional approach is that technical, transactional approach. Our adaptive approach is to bring humanity back into that process. It's interesting to me that the one practice in the business environment that's all about people has been so little about people in the past, right? And so as we think about the help that we can give to the people who are helping the people right now, I think about the constituents that we have, the candidates that we support, the clients that we support, the communities that we support and are a part of, and then our core, our own team. I think there are lots of different ways that we're navigating that, and thinking about the candidates. And give me a chat or something if I go too long, because I can get a little fired up, and I know we're tight on time. Thinking about the Y Scouts approach and how what we're doing is working to connect people to work that matters. If we're engaging with candidates and they are armoring, right? They're not allowing themselves to access the vulnerability that's required for authenticity. If they're selling themselves to their idea of a job description, what that company would want to be, we can't get to know their authentic selves, right? If we can connect with them and understand, connecting our creative minds to their creative minds to really get at the core of what is that purpose plus passion to yield action that drives impact, we can support them more effectively. And so we have, and you can read about this in Rosie's fantastic book, but we have a number of things that we're doing to operationalize the humanizing, the rehumanizing of this service that we provide to clients, to candidates, to communities. And in the application with candidates, one of the things that we do is we employ a covert approach where we don't disclose who our client, that role, that hiring leader is. We want to talk with you to get to know Vikas, Nancy, Tom, Curtis, Eric, Carley, without you feeling the need to armor yourself, right? And I often, people think I'm joking, but I'm not actually joking. Like, our job at Y Scouts is to talk with people, learn about what's most important to them, and help connect them to that. Like, how is that actually a job we get paid to do, right? It's pretty amazing. And so getting those things aligned with our candidates, allowing them to have those conversations with us. One of the things that we're really proud of is that, and that really comes into play now in our VUCA world dealing with the pandemic, is we make time to have conversations with people just because we want to help them. We may not even have a role that we're trying to fill that aligns for them. We want to get to learn about them to help them and allow them to have conversations about what is most important to them. What are their values? How have they leveraged those values recently? How have they activated those so that they can start really engaging and building that values muscle, right?
Well,
Go
and
ahead.
I would imagine a couple things. Is one is, that will help them, as Eric was saying, like, look inward as they navigate, right, these uncertain waters. But I would also think that that's going to very much help you, or help them as you move forward to figure out what's next, right? I mean, they're going to be looking to, now that I have this greater clarity, and what am I going to be looking for, when job markets open up more, hopefully on the other side of all of this hecticness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and when you think about it, organizations are struggling right now. They're, as Curtis was talking about his client, I was feeling for them, right? There are organizations that really are struggling right now. They're also in a great position. People have a lot of time to talk about or consider new opportunities right now. And the gravity of the situation that we're in, I think, can help bring to front of mind for people, doing work that matters to you shouldn't be an option. You are authorized, you are entitled, you are afforded the opportunity. I'm getting a little goosebumpy, but to do the things that are important to you, to both engage with work that matters and create work that matters in really important, meaningful ways. And so, while our clients may have to put some searches on hold right now, we're not slowing down for them, because when they come out on the other side, when we all come out on the other side, we'd love to have a number of really great candidates teed up, ready to talk with them about this amazing new purpose-driven, values-aligned opportunity for them.
That's great. I love everything about that. I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. So thank you so much. That just, it's okay to get goosebumpy. I mean, it's a goosebumpy thing. So
yes.
Well, I
know
we all should do work. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're short on time, but I think it's also important to talk about, when we're talking about the dynamic with leadership search, most of the focus is usually on clients, and we put a lot of emphasis on the candidate side. I don't want to do short work for our clients, though. We do really powerful work to help them help themselves. And so helping them uncover the culture. You know, we talked about how your values aren't the thing that's, you know, on the back of your company t-shirt or printed on the wall. Your culture is your values demonstrated through the behaviors of the people in your organization. And through our support, we can help our clients investigate, what does that really mean for us? And we can support clients who are already there and clients who are working to be there, right? To always grow and improve. And so really excited about that. And then we can reach and see, when we get that great alignment, not overselling that client and who they are, because we want to be authentic on all sides, not overcoaching the candidate to be someone that we hope they would want to be, but really letting them be themselves. We can create more genuine, authentic, enduring matches that can drive impact for purpose-driven organizations. And the proof is in the pudding on that. I mean, we offer a 1-year guarantee on all of the matches we make. That's really unheard of in the search industry.
Yeah. Well, I love it. You know, really what you're talking, it's clarity of purpose and being authentic on an organizational level and an individual level, which is so cute, right? The taking that armor off, which we can't navigate the waters of VUCA with armor. We just can't, right?
We can't.
I love it. So, oh my gosh, like this, I just, first of all, to everyone, I mean, thank you for being in the book, and thank you for taking extra time to be here and share more. I think it adds rich context, and I didn't know what you all were doing. I knew it was going to be great stuff in thinking about this environment. So I just so appreciate that. And I know some people had to pop off, but we still have several people here. And so you will stay on for a little bit. So if you want to ask questions to any of the panelists, you can either type it in the chat box, or you can use the Q&A. It could be for general, or if it's for a specific panelist, if you can just put the name of the panelist. We're happy to have a chat. So we'll give it a couple minutes to see if questions come in, and then again we will send out a recording to everybody as well. Because I know some people had to sign off early, and some people were actually relying on the recording that signed up for this but couldn't be here in person. So we'll make sure we get that out to everybody. So we have a question for Eric. How many employees are part of Miron, and also curious of how many dream coaches are at Miron?
So if we include our field staff, we have about 1,200, and currently I am the only dream coach in that role. So if our office staff, I think, is around 400 to 500, don't quote me on that for sure. I'd have to look at those numbers again right now. And a lot of who I work with is our office staff. I do work with some of our field staff. That's probably one of my biggest opportunities to continue to work more with our field. I get to meet with them a lot at our yearly summits, which is, you know, a lot of times where those conversations start. I do them in January, and it's interesting. Come February, I have a fair amount of people from the field reaching out to me because I'm out of sight, out of mind. And then all of a sudden they see me in January and it's back top of mind again.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Let's see, hold on. Looks like there's something in Nancy. What were the thresholds and boundaries that you navigated and went beyond on your personal growth journey?
Ooh. What do you mean? Maybe I don't understand the question. Can you repeat?
Yeah, it just says Miron. I don't know, Myron, if you can add. Miron asked it. So he just says, what were thresholds and boundaries that you navigated and went beyond on your personal growth journey?
Yeah. Thresholds, I'd say the scariest part was learning about myself and some of the motivations and self-identifying as a people pleaser, a perfectionist, and an A-type personality cubed. So now I say I'm in recovery for all of those. So I think the boundaries were just kind of a lot of self-awareness, other awareness, and then understanding that, frankly, part of my purpose I learned was actually empowering others, and that I got more jazzed from seeing others' success and empowering them and helping them thrive. That was much more, learning that was pretty fun. So I don't know if that answers the question about boundaries. It was kind of boundaryless. Now I'm pretty good at boundaries. Boundaries. Because I will mention, I just briefly, when you are a people pleaser, perfectionist, and A-type, right? And you're 4'10", and you're female in a very different industry, and people recognize that about you, meaning you're a people pleaser, perfectionist, right? And really hardworking, that can really get exploited, right? And so those were some boundaries that I learned a little too late for me. But now, again, I know that about myself, but I haven't had to even put those up in the new world. So maybe that
There you
talks.
go. Thank you. And Mark, this is for all panelists, would love to hear what each of you are seeing as the most challenging issue you're dealing with today, and how are you viewing this in the positive?
Well, I can start with that. I mean, I think most of us are dealing with the most difficult thing today is the COVID-19 and what that's doing to the economy and to our own businesses and everything. By far and away, that's the biggest piece that we have. We have problems with our own clients, problems with our own companies that we're dealing with. I think the positive thing that really comes out of that are twofold. One, I use humor a lot by nature, and during this period, I've had a little bit of pause on that. And I had a communication with my company, and I just used a little humor within that. And the response was overwhelmingly, do more of that. We need more of that. And I think the other positive thing I'd mention is our companies really come together as I don't want to say family, but they've gotten really close, and they've reacted in a way that's been very supportive, which is a validation of the culture, I think. So that for us is positive, because how people react under stress and times tells a lot about their character. And I really can't tell you enough about the employees at our company that have shown tremendous character in this time.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tom. Any other panelists want to answer that one?
Yeah, I can. I'd like to weigh in on that. And so I think that what we're feeling, all of us collectively in our community, is fear and uncertainty, right? And so how that impacts people can be very different and very much the same. And so again, looking across our constituents for our candidates, we're here to listen. People are worried about their jobs if they were moving into a search. There's a lot of ambiguity now. And so we can be there as your partner to just listen to you. And I'd even put a call out to everyone on the webinar that, if you'd like to hop on the phone just to kind of talk through your own values, how you've been leveraging those in your career, what you'd like to be doing, give a shout, pop me a message on LinkedIn or on email, and we'll get some time set on the calendar to just talk through. For our clients, a lot of our clients are facing that fear, uncertainty, ambiguity. Some of them have had to pause their searches. While they're pausing, we're not. We're keeping working, we're staying attentive, we're maintaining the very high bar, and we're having those authentic conversations that will yield the right people for their teams to both fulfill their missions, support their values, and deliver the financial and organizational stability that will let them achieve mission fulfillment. And then for our own team, our core, we've got a ongoing all day long virtual team room. There aren't that many of us. We're about 15. We're small but mighty. And anybody can pop into that virtual team room at any time during the day just to work with someone. We also are hosting a once a week, maybe we'll increase this, but everybody gets together on Zoom and we go together through a guided meditation. And so that, in addition to some of the things that we have in their individual development plans, which are around, of course, our organization's values, fulfilling our charter, the thing we're trying to accomplish, but also an element of our development plans are self-care and service leading to well-being. We created a matrix so that people can put down, okay, what are the things I do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly that will help them achieve the respite and resuscitation that they need to continue charging forward.
Nice. We have another question that came in, but any other panelists, before I go to that one, want to answer how are you taking a challenge that you're dealing with today and turning it or viewing it in the positive?
I can share a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead. We'll have both of you go, Carley.
Okay. So we're a nonprofit, so that's kind of an interesting piece of what we're doing, but obviously people are really nervous about the economy. So fundraising has like completely shifted. The spring tends to be kind of a big fundraising time for people. So a lot of us had to cancel events, stuff like that. So I think that's just been like another hard pivot for us of how to be creative about fundraising. But it's also been kind of a cool time to check in with our donors, because we're all like kind of communally. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm sorry. My husband's in the medical field and he keeps calling. I'm gonna go take this quick.
Okay. Okay. Eric, over to you.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think one of the biggest challenges for me right now is in that coaching role is always being present and truly listening. And this, with the COVID-19, with my own uncertainties, it's really difficult from a personal standpoint not to get caught up in some of the same emotions that the people I'm coaching are having, where, and especially in the office setting or the settings that I've set up until now, it's prepare myself, become present. And I think one of the biggest opportunities now is to remind myself of what are those practices I did when I first started doing this, to become present for that conversation and really set aside anything from me and never make it about me. Because I know in the last week, I've caught myself a couple times saying, oh, I just interjected and it's becoming about me, because it's the same emotions that are there. And how do I begin to step away from that? So one, the opportunity is to increase my awareness, and then to really start that practice again of becoming present before those conversations.
Great. Thank you.
Can I add something
Yeah.
real quick to
Yeah.
that? Because Eric brought up a really good point, I think, and that is, constantly reminding ourselves and others of kind of the growth mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are new waters that we're all learning, and we're all learning, right? And so that's one. And then two, to Eric's point, be compassionate, be empathetic to each other, right? And share compassion with others, but then also to yourself. It's okay to be fearful, right? And actually say it, right? I'm a little nervous right now, because guess what? Someone will be empathetic to you, and it's okay to say it, and then be compassionate for yourself too, that it's okay, work through it, and then again, resilience, and come on and continue on. So I think that's kind of some things we have to keep telling ourselves too, to be present for ourselves and to be there for others, right? Because
yes, that we can be scared and resilient at the same time, right?
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So Carol wants to know, any of you want to answer this? Just how are you handling the reality of not having projected revenue coming in? So for those of you that your businesses have been specifically
I'll
impacted.
answer that, since it's also the answer to the previous question of what's the most challenging issue I'm dealing with today. And at Improving, this is the most challenging issue. Sales cycle in a business like Improving is quite lengthy. It's 60 days, 90 days, sometimes even longer than that. And but what I can also say is we've had a number of clients in providing transparency here that just, they have no revenues. One's a cruise line, right? And so gone overnight. And pretty much every day at this point, if people want to, every single day, we are having another client cancel, and almost all business development, slowing down. There are a few industries untouched, which is very good, that provides us, but across all industries, that might be 15, 20% of the industries right now. So how am I handling that reality? The first, I'm going to go back to our trust. It's rooted into the trust behaviors. You have to confront that reality. I've been through this before. I led a company through the .com challenge, 9/11, and Enron as well. And part of that is confronting the reality of where you are today. And while it can come with its consequences and things like that, I have seen a number of businesses that have acted like ostriches in the past, and they stick their head in the ground and they just hope the reality would go away. And that's one thing we haven't. I've brought our leaders in on this, confronting that reality, being transparent with them, another trust behavior, and just talking straight about this. And this is not just within our company. This is within our partners and all of our stakeholders, our suppliers, right? Our partners that we are doing this with. And so I think talking about it, talking about that reality, extending trust to others. And, as we go through this, there's mentioned several times about listening first, doing a lot more listening before taking different actions, listening to your clients, listening to fears, listening to your suppliers. And all of these are trust behaviors. So living into those guiding principles and let them guide.
Thank you so much. It's interesting because what I'm hearing of all of you, if I kind of go off the principles that I, anchored tonight off of that really run throughout the whole book, is it's really some intentionality for each of you of, it is those 5 rehumanizing principles, but it's really of each of you trying to show up with more of that creative mind, right? Like guiding by purpose, right? So yes, we can acknowledge we have fear and anxiety, but let's really look at what's on the other side, right? Tasha, you were talking about that with your clients. Curtis, you just talked about that. I mean, Eric, so it's really looking at that. And I think if there's something that, I'm taking a lot away from tonight, but if there's something that I'm taking away from that, it's because we've been in the same boat. We're a small business and we just saw revenues cut because speaking in workshops, but it's forced us to be creative about how can we better leverage Zoom. And there's so much good technology and people still need this, and they still need development, and they still need CEUs, and they still need, to upgrade their inner operating system. And so it's reaffirming for me that, as we take that long-term view and try to anchor in our core values, that, it's getting through those muddy waters, but having a clear path forward than had we not done that. And we're hearing that from our clients too. So, let's see, we have one more question, or let's see, a couple more, let's see. Okay, so first from Don, he said, traditional IT has come up very short in terms of results. Curtis comments on IT having second worst impression. Many feel things must be done radically differently, but to get buy-in for radical change requires trust. Any thoughts for gaining trust from both sides, clients and developers of software?
Wow, love the question and couldn't agree with you more. When I look at your comment, right? Delivering results is another trust behavior. Practicing accountability, another trust behavior. Righting your wrongs, another trust behavior. And we all value these differently, but there must be some radical things that change on both sides. I was coaching a CEO, and he was firing, this was 2 years ago, his CIO, who it was an incredible CIO. And the reasons why he was letting the CIO go was because the CIO started hiding things from him. But when I was coaching the CEO, I said, what was your role? Because for the first year he was working for you, he hid nothing from you. And this was a friend of mine, it was the CEO, and it comes from both sides. Trust is not one direction. You cannot expect it if you are not going to extend it. And the solution to this is for us to go first, but then broach the difficult conversations again in speaking truth, but doing it very respectfully with other parts of the organization saying this must be reciprocated or it will not work. It is two directional. And so, Don, I agree with you, but it requires hard conversations, open conversations, just like I had with the CEO saying, yep, he's hiding, you may need to let him go, but I want to let you know, I believe your behaviors led to him doing that because I knew both parties in this. And he took it to heart, right? If you want the truth, if you want your IT organization to tell you the truth, to be transparent, you can't be beating them up every time they tell you bad news. You can hold them accountable, but you can't beat them up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's truth with care, or what Kim Scott calls radical candor, right? It's that intersection of both. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I add to that, Rosie,
yeah.
just quickly? One of the interview questions that I always think is very interesting to ask when you're getting to know someone is, tell me about the last time you extended trust, right? Mm-hmm. So people spend a lot of time thinking about, but they don't spend a lot of time thinking about activating the extension of trust and how they might do that. I just got a note that my internet connection is unstable. Welcome to
you cut out briefly, but it was okay.
Okay.
So good. Thank you. And I just want to do a time check. So we've got about, I want us to like hop off at 8:30 just because it's getting a little bit late, but we have one more question. So, and this isn't directed at anybody specific. So if any of you want to answer this, from Beth, it says, how do you convince stuffy leaders that it's okay to be fun and quirky?
Let me jump in on that because really quickly, I would say never stop being fun and quirky. That's how you do it, because I always find it interesting. I encourage that behavior at our company, actually. So the way to answer that, though, is you're not always going to be able to change everyone you deal with, but don't stop being yourself and don't stop doing the quirky things or the fun things. Continue to do them is the only way to do that, I think.
Yeah.
And I would add, that's why we hired you. It's because of that. Yeah. Continue to be fun and quirky. So,
well, it's funny. It reminds me, several years ago, I had a fellow leader say to me, something about, people may not take you seriously because, my favorite color is sparkle. And I'm like, whatever, like, seriously, like, then I don't, like, I think I appreciate what you said, Tom, because I do think, and it goes back to the conversation I feel like we've had tonight, is about that authenticity. And I think, whatever it is, if you're not a fun and quirky person, don't try to be something you're not, but like, if I sit here and try to be stuffy and be like people go, what the hell's wrong with you? So I just think the more that we do that inner work, right, to get clear about who we are and what's our authentic self, and then we find where we can bring that forward. I think that that's really what's key. And if you're fun and quirky, find a place where you can be that. And if you're not, don't try it. Just be who you are, whatever that is.
I was going to say, I think anybody that's kind of on the conscious leadership path, like working to be a conscious leader, which is constant work. There's not a checkbox ever, right? It's constant work. That's self-awareness and authenticity, to your point, and not taking ourselves too seriously,
yeah.
Right? But that's exactly it. It's authentic. That's everything about that, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Hey, I want to thank all of our panelists for coming tonight. Really appreciate it, especially in these extraordinary times. I want to thank everybody who has joined in remotely to be part of this conversation. Really appreciate the questions. Great conversation, truly. One of the things I wanted to mention, just in wrapping up for this evening, I'm not sure if all of you know how we met Rosie, but a number of years ago when we were launching the Twin Cities Conscious Capitalism chapter, we actually were able to finagle Raj Sisodia to kick off our Conscious Capitalism chapter. And that was November of 2018. And the reason he was in town was because he was actually coming in for Rosie's conference, which is Fusion 2.0. And Conscious Capitalism Twin Cities is actually joining Fusion 2.0 in promoting that, and it's probably going to be in the spring of 2021. Obviously, current situation is up for grabs of actually when that happens, but we are looking for sponsors for that organization. If any of you are interested, please reach out to David Utz and I. We are going to be, our contact information will be in the session that we send out. We are planning May 14th for a Purposeful Pints event for our next Conscious Capitalism event. To be determined on whether that's going to be in person or whether that is going to be virtual, but you all get notified of the next event. So wanted to thank you all very much again for joining us tonight, and have a great and safe next couple of weeks. Take care.